It is 11 a.m. and it's Sunday morning. Good morning to you, wherever you are. Thanks for joining me. It is Sunday, March 5th, 2016. It's Richie Allen here. Who else would it be? Joining you for Sunday View, the programme where we try and dissect the headlines of the major newspapers here in the UK, the broadsheets and the tabloids. It's absolutely raining cats and dogs here in Manchester. It's a good old Manchester weather, but I'm in good form. I hope you are as well. Got some really interesting stories lined up to chat about over the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour, because as usual I have no idea how long this will take, but we'll do it anyway. So thanks for joining me.
For critical information ignored by the mainstream media, log on to davidicke.com/headlines now.
Broadcasting live from the great city of Manchester, England. This is the Richie Allen Show on davidicke.com.
Yeah, one of the things I've not gotten around to doing, and I've been talking about doing it for ages, you know, you always got things on the long finger, is making a set of jingles or music for Sunday View, because it's a programme onto itself. I haven't gotten around to doing that yet, but I will do. I will do indeed. You can tweet me at any time on @RichieAllenShow. That's my Twitter handle. Email richie@richieallen.co.uk. We're broadcasting live on davidicke.com right now, and pretty much everything I talk about today, as usual, can be found in depth, covered in depth and analysed at davidicke.com headlines. That's /headlines. Bookmark the page there. We're also live on Fab Radio 2 here in Manchester, and of course on TuneIn Radio. Download the TuneIn app. It's very good. Millions of radio stations, maybe not millions, but tens of thousands of stations from around the world can be found on there. Right, Awakening UFO took place in Manchester yesterday. We've been advertising it for the best part of 4 weeks or so. I was due to be there yesterday. I couldn't be there for personal reasons, and I won't go into those personal reasons because they're personal, but I had a good reason for not being there. I'm gutted because I would have loved to have met the people organising the Awakening event, and I was due to say hello to Eric von Daniken, whom I've known for a few years now, and I couldn't do that, and I was really gutted to have missed it, but I'm looking forward to the next one, and I'll be there no matter what. I understand it was a triumph. I've been looking very closely at what people are saying on social media about it, and people loved it. Apparently it was a terrific day, so congratulations to everybody involved in putting on Awakening UFO here in Manchester. Fabulous stuff, that. Right, so then we've got the broadsheet newspapers and some of the tabloids here. We'll have a look through them. Before that, though, there is a story that is getting a lot of coverage today. Excuse me, we'll have a look at that. The story is about the rights of EU nationals living in the UK. So that's getting an enormous amount of coverage today. So a number of news organisations are leading with the fact that MPs are saying, a cross-party group of MPs are saying, that the United Kingdom should make a unilateral decision to safeguard the rights of EU nationals living here. Now, this cross-party group of MPs are saying that EU citizens who contribute to the UK economy shouldn't be forced to live under a cloud of uncertainty. Members of the Exiting the EU committee, they also want healthcare and pension rights for UK expats living overseas. Now, the UK government has said it wants to guarantee the rights of EU citizens and British nationals as early as we possibly can. Now, when this has come up in the past, I've described it as a non-issue, and I'll explain why later. Now, I'm not saying it's a non-issue if you're a Spanish man or woman living here, or a French man or woman, and you're paying in to the system and you have a national insurance number. I'm not saying that. I'm saying overall it's a non-issue, and it won't be an issue, and I'll explain why in a minute. Now, last week, as you know, the House of Lords, these are the old farts who fall asleep for much of the afternoon and wake up just in time to collect £300 per day for doing sod all. The Lords, the upper house, they voted 358 to 256 to guarantee the rights of EU nationals, basically sending the Brexit bill back to the Commons, right? Yes, we agree with the Brexit bill, but you've got to put this in there as a guarantee. May said she plans, that's Theresa May, to trigger Article 50 by the end of this month, March. Okay, we'll see. Now, some EU workers living here in the UK have been speaking to national media about it. Here's a couple of Greek lads who work in a restaurant in London talking about their concerns.
Really, I think that Brexit will affect me totally. Because first, now imagine that I'm here and I don't need any work permit or any license or any visa to be here. But when the Article 50 will be triggered from the government, then I think that we'll have a lot of problems to stay in England.
He welcomes the recommendation by MPs that the rights of EU nationals already living here should be protected, including guaranteeing access to healthcare, education and pensions. Restaurant manager Chris has lived in the UK for most of his life. He says he's earned the rights he has here.
From the time I come here, I work, I pay all my taxes, I help people, a lot of people I help. People from the street homeless, I put them on the homes. I used to work charity on the homeless house.
Right, so there are 3.3 million EU citizens living in the UK, and I think I've mentioned this statistic before. There are 1.2 million UK citizens living in the European Union. So why is this a massive issue? Why is it in the news headlines all the time? It isn't really. And if any of this was real, this is the difficulty when you make programs like this, because you know that it's an illusion. What's going on is a game. But if it was real, the UK government would be in a very strong bargaining position, wouldn't they? Obviously, because there are more EU citizens here than there are UK citizens overseas in the EU. So it would be a good bargaining chip to play as you're negotiating trade deals and tariffs and customs union deals and all of that. It's a non-issue. Basically, from the word go, you would say, look, the EU citizens living here paying taxes, remember, most of them, and paying into the system, paying their social insurance contribution, their national insurance, leave them alone, they're good, and vice versa. The UK citizens living overseas, most of them in Spain and Portugal and France, are contributing to the economies there. Leave it alone, I would have said. Now, speaking of the European Union and its future, you'll know that there is an election in France looming, presidential election, and the French presidential candidate Marine Le Pen has been talking, and she's accused the European Union of breaking up society. She's promised to renegotiate France's agreements with the European Union in the event that she wins the presidency. This is Le Pen.
The European Union will be the last to feed illusions and to ruin the people of Europe with its subscription to the globalist ideology that promises our territories for looting and leading our society towards fragmentation. We will begin a total renegotiation of all the European agreements in order to get back our monetary, legislative, territorial, and economic sovereignty, followed by a referendum on Frexit. We will not be the first, and nor will we be the last ones on this path. Not all French know it yet, but the truth will come to light in the coming month. The euro is just a dead man walking. The question is no longer whether we will exit the euro, but when and under which conditions.
Well, we're going to see real soon, aren't we, about Le Pen. I mean, Le Pen is an interesting one. You know, I won't bore the living bejesus out of you, by talking about black and white again. The things aren't in black and white, but they're not black and white. And while, you know, on the face of it, those of us who see the tyranny of the European Union, and we see what, you know, unfettered migration has done to countries, while we know this, it's very tempting to jump into bed with people like Marine Le Pen and Geert Wilders in Holland. Very tempting, because on the face of it, they agree with you or you agree with them. But these people, and I know I'm going to be accused of making generalizations and I'm going to be accused of being a shill, but these people are despicable, disgusting racists. They are. And they never, ever, ever talk about the real reasons we have this massive migration coming from the Middle East and countries that have been destroyed by Western intervention. Never. Yes, you can talk about the consequences all you want. The consequences are obvious. A degradation of essential services, all part of the plan. But these racists just talk about migrants. They don't talk about why the migrants are coming across Europe, southern Europe, into northwest Europe. Of course they don't do that. So it isn't black and white. So when certain alternative media people support people like that, to me they're worthless. As organisations, as editors, as broadcasters, as journalists, they are worthless. Because you are subscribing to the narrative that these people are bad. Immigrants are just lazy, bad bastards who want to come into our countries, steal our women and use up all of our resources. No, it's not quite like that. Yes, the unfettered immigration and migration is devastating countries. It is devastating cultures, no doubt about that. All part of the plan. But you'll never hear Marine Le Pen talk about that, or Geert Wilders, or anybody else. That's what I say. Now, speaking of the French presidential race, oh God, this is really interesting. Sky News today have been talking. They're always talking, Sky. They're not reporting. They don't report the news. They invent the news. Now, they said, Sky did, that they have been presented with alleged evidence that the Russians are interfering in the French election. It isn't the first time in recent weeks that Sky have made these allegations, but they're big on it today. Big on it today. The claims that Russia have been interfering in the French election, the claims are coming from a digital marketing company employed by Emmanuel Macron. Now, he is an independent candidate. Independent candidate, yes. He is a pro-European Union centrist candidate, allegedly independent. Emmanuel Macron. Good-looking guy. Media love him in France. They love him. Now, his digital marketing company has come out and said the Russians are interfering in the French election. Here's the introduction to this by Sky News. I think it's Isabel Webster. No, it isn't. It isn't. It's the guy presenting with her. Listen to the introduction to this.
Now, Sky News has been shown alleged evidence of Russian interference in the French presidential election.
Yeah, our Europe correspondent Mark Stone's spoken to the head of the digital campaign for the frontrunner, Emmanuel Macron, and sent us this report from Paris.
Tucked away on a Parisian side street, a nondescript building, the unlikely headquarters for Emmanuel Macron's bid to become French president. 3 floors at the top of the glass block are rented to En Marche, Mr. Macron's new political movement.
Well, it certainly feels like a grassroots organisation. There's still a sense that they're somewhat moving in.
This independent candidate and his volunteer network have none of the machinery of the mainstream parties. En Marche is presented as fresh, pro-Europe, centrist, and it's propelled him. But his success seems to have made him vulnerable too.
Here you have the sources of this attack that would spread to these key persons and then poof.
Mounia Majoubi is Emmanuel Macron's head of digital campaigning.
We're accusing Russia Today and Sputnik News to be the first source of of most of the false information shared about our candidate and all of a symbiotic way of working with all these fascist organization or extreme right social media organizations.
But that's not hacking.
No, that's the first part. And then, at the same time, during the same period, with the same rhythm, we are the victim, we are the targets of hackers on our servers.
Now, we are the target of aggression on our servers. It isn't hacking, he said. Remember, Sky News have set this up as evidence of Russian interference. To be fair to the reporter in Paris talking to Macron's digital marketing company, he at least asks them the question. Listen to this.
We can only rely on his word that the attempted hacks have taken place, but the French government and intelligence services both point fingers at Russia.
We can only rely on his word. We can only rely on his word. But the French intelligence agencies are pointing fingers at Russia too. Where's the proof?
And it's media. Macron's main opponent is Marine Le Pen, anti-EU, anti-the euro, and with a growing chance of becoming president. If she did, it would be a near-fatal blow to the EU. A strategic goal for Mr. Putin would be achieved.
Imagine that the Sky News reporter has just said there that a Putin a strategic goal of Vladimir Putin is to dismantle the European Union. Now, I've gone looking low and high for any video or audio clips, and if they're out there, I'll put my hands up and I will apologise. I've looked for any evidence that Vladimir Putin is anti-European Union and wants the European Union dismantled in any way. If I'm wrong, and he has said that in the past, well, first of all, he's right. Of course, it should be dismantled. But I've not found any evidence to say that Putin's strategic goal is to get rid of the European Union. I've not found any. Am I naive? No. If you were in the situation Russia finds itself in now, you would be better off if the European Union was to collapse and states were to go back to governing themselves and to being independent and sovereign. Obviously. But any evidence that Putin strategically is trying to undermine the European Union? None. We have to take his word for it, said the presenter. Alleged evidence, said Sky News. But it's not presented like that. It's presented as if it's factual. You know, it's a fact. The Russians are, you know, involved in a state-sponsored doping problem. Their athletes are the biggest cheats in the world. The Russians hacked the US elections. The Russians this, the Russians that. Of course, much of this is to do with the fact that the Russians have basically prevented, or at least stalled, the cabal's plans for the Middle East and Syria. It's disgraceful stuff, isn't it? Disgraceful stuff by a news organisation. You just don't put that out there. You don't allow somebody make an allegation like that, like Emmanuel Macron, his computers are being looked at by Russia. You can't allow him say that without asking him for proof. And when they don't have proof, you must aggressively challenge them. I don't mean insult them or belittle them, but as a reporter, you must say, well, this is nothing, is it? But excuse me, Mr. whatever your name is, from the digital company, this is nothing. This proves nothing. Would you agree with that? Well, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't prove anything. But of course, you don't get that with Sky News or the BBC. It's just out there, floating around, isn't it? It's just out there. The idea that the Russians are trying to sabotage and influence elections all over the world, with no proof, of course. Thought you might be interested in that. To the newspapers then. The reason why we're here, 17 and a half minutes past the hour on Sunday, March 5th, 2017. You are with me, Richie Allen. Thanks for your company. Miserable, rotten, dirty, stinking, filthy day it is today. It's gruesome out there. I'm looking out the window now, which is right in front of my position here at the old studio. So, the Sunday Times, big headline, Chancellor's 60 billion Brexit fighting fund. The man in charge of the purse strings in the United Kingdom is Philip Hammond. And the Sunday Times are saying, he's written in the Sunday Times, Hammond has written in the paper. And in the article, he says he will use this week's budget to build up a war chest against the economic turbulence of leaving the European Union. So that's his article there. I can't read all of it because you have to pay to read the Times online. Now, the Times editorial praises Hammond's tactics, and they say the virtue of a safe pair of hands. They praise his virtue of a safe pair of hands. But the Times says once the dust has settled, Hammond must get to work on a radical new model for the UK economy. Hammond says that the economy had proven to be robust, but there was still a need for fiscal discipline ahead of leaving the European Union. And then he said, Hammond did, that the country needed to get back to living within our means and reduce our borrowing. Hammond said, we need to get back to living within our means and reduce our borrowing. Right. Come back to that in a second. Tens of thousands of people marched in London yesterday to protest against more austerity and more cuts to the health service and more cuts to benefits, much needed benefits by people who can't work. And these people are campaigning and asking for more money to be spent on the National Health Service and more money to be spent on social care. But Hammond is saying looking to borrow more money is confused and reckless. And the Sunday Times says, now listen carefully to this, that public sector net debt in the UK, not including public sector banks, debt is at £1.68 trillion. at the end of January this year, equivalent to 85.5% of gross domestic product. That statistic comes from national statistics. We are in debt, we have to live within our means and reduce our borrowing, says the Chancellor Philip Hammond. Now, I know I've banged on about this a few times in recent programmes, but I'm going to bang on about it again. We're very lucky on this programme, and there's no arrogance, there's no ego here. We're very lucky that we reach a more mainstream audience. We reach people who ordinarily wouldn't listen to programmes like ours. That's why I bang on about this issue. Debt to who or whom? Who is the money owed to? Live within our means. What does that mean? Does that mean the state must live within its means? Is anybody asking the question, why is the state borrowing money from anybody to begin with? And I've said before, this is the massive lie that binds the conspiracy together. So if you see the conspiracy as a box, the banking system is the twine, the cable that binds the box together. It really is. It's real gatekeeper stuff, this. Entry-level stuff for you. I know that. I know you're way beyond that. But most people are not. Who is owed the money? Who is owed the £1.7 trillion? I've tried in vain to get a journalist to ask it. Kay Burley at Sky, Nicky Campbell. Both of them tweet me back on occasion when I've poked them gently about their programmes and about the issues on their programmes. All good banter, nothing malicious. I've never insulted any of these people. I've never been rude to them, overly rude anyway. I've never been, just downright nasty with them. They banter back, no harm in that. Kay Burley asked me where did I put my Pulitzer Prize. But I don't have one, of course. I'm not as good as Kay. So all this banter goes on sometimes in the afternoons. You can follow it on Twitter. As soon as I ask these people to put a question to the Bank of England Governor Mark Carney about the creation of money, they go very quiet. No response to that. No retweeting of that. No caustic remark to that. Why? Because it's the gatekeeper for the conspiracy. Does Kay Burley on Sky, Nicky Campbell on the BBC, do they know this? I don't think so. I think they're bright enough people, but I don't think they understand this. I don't think they get it. I want you to have a listen to this. I dug this out earlier on. Here is a senior economist at the Bank of England. Now listen, this is vital stuff, this again. If you're brand new to this information and you're listening to this programme and you've only just recently started to tune into it, God help you. But if you are recent, if you are new to it, listen to who this is. Senior Bank of England economist Ryland Thomas admitting basically the massive... He's not admitting the massive conspiracy. He's admitting He's acknowledging how money comes into existence. And it's vital that you hear this. This is Ryland Thomas, Senior Economist, Bank of England. Listen carefully.
Ryland, your article is about how money gets created. We're surrounded here by gold in the vaults of the Bank of England, and historically in the gold standards, the amount of gold would have been related to the stock of money in the economy. Things are very different now. In the modern economy, where does money come from?
Well, broad money, which in many ways is a better measure of the amount of money circulating in the economy, includes all the bank deposits of households and companies. And one of the key points of the article is that banks create additional broad money whenever they make a loan. Banks create additional broad money whenever they make a loan. Banks create additional broad money whenever they make a loan. Banks create additional broad money whenever they make a loan. Now, while this is nothing new, it is sometimes overlooked as the main way in which money is created. Overlooked as the main way in which money is created. Overlooked as the main way in which money is created. And it runs contrary to the view sometimes put forward that banks can only lend out deposits that they already have. In fact, loans create deposits, not the other way around.
There you go. It's the main way in which money is created. Broad money loaned into existence by banks from the horse's mouth. A senior economist at the Bank of England telling it as it is. And those criminal institutions, and they are criminal by the way, who created money out of thin air, loaned it to you. Listen to this. Again, I know there are those of you who've listened to the program a long time, you're way beyond this, but you can share this with people whom can't get it or can't understand it. This is the way it works. These criminal institutions created money out of thin air, loaned it to you at no cost to them whatsoever, because they invented that out of thin air like that. There you are. Then they charged you interest on it. You couldn't pay, so they took your house. What does that mean? Well, it means they started off with nothing. Nothing. They credited you with money electronically, numbers on a screen. You couldn't pay them back. They now have something, and you have nothing. Right? It doesn't get any more simple. Yet it is the reality that dare not speak its name on national media. They will not talk about it. A criminal institution lied to you by telling you they were loaning you money. They weren't. They didn't have that money. You went out and got a house. They asked you for 8%, 9%, 11%, 12%, whatever it is. On top of that, you couldn't make those payments. Your wages are not going up. The cost of living is. The interest prices maybe fluctuate. You're struggling, you can't make it. They take back your house. It was a fraudulent transaction from the word go. They now have something. You've got nothing. And allowed to do that, they got greedy, allowed to create money out of thin air, derivative trading, junk bonds, the subprime mortgage crisis, phantom housing bubbles created by banks using money they invented out of thin air. But worse again, the criminal bastards used your savings and they used your pensions. Criminals. We were told these institutions were broke, weren't we? Do you remember? 2008, 2009, they're broke. What happened? Were they dismantled? Were they allowed to fail? Were they? Because any other business, in any other walk of life, you screw up, you're out of business. It's the way the cookie crumbles. That's the jungle. Were these banks broken up, dismantled, allowed to fail? No, they weren't. They were bailed out using taxpayers' money. Your money. This is so ludicrous. I've said this before. I've been saying it for 10 years. This is so fucking lunatic in its reality. It's hard sometimes for me to accept that people can't see this. Bailed out using your money. They fucked you over. Lulled you into a transaction based on a pack of lies. Humiliated you and took your house. Went off and invented casino banking. I mentioned all the terms already. Derivatives trading, subprime mortgages, junk bonds, packaging up bad mortgages, selling them, buying them, good after bad. Went broke. And then they were bailed out using your money. They weren't punished. They weren't forced to change their practices. They weren't allowed to go bankrupt. Why? Because it's part of a plan to impoverish people and to detach you and me from owning property and land. I don't own a property. I am 42 years old. I have worked all my life. I couldn't even imagine being able to afford to put a down payment on a house and get a mortgage. Could you? I guarantee you, without having any sort of, I've not done any survey, but I'm guessing that the majority of people in Manchester my age, 42, I bet you more than half of them don't own their own house. And we are paying ludicrous, over the odds rent prices. £800, £900, £1,000 a month rent for 3-bedroomed houses. And we can't get a mortgage because we're not supposed to. Listen to Keith Pilbeam. Who the hell is he, you ask? Keith is a professor at the Department of Economics and Finance at City University. Good guy, Keith. We must look him up and see can we get him on the programme. He told RT yesterday Professor Keith Pilbeam. He told RT yesterday that bailing out the banks screwed the people even more.
Obviously, if you decide to bail out failed banks, then obviously a lot of money's got put into that rather than into education, infrastructure and other things that could have improved the economy. So this is, in economics, we call it opportunity cost. And so this decision to bail out the banks, to some extent, meant that other money couldn't be used for other government projects and investment in the economy. It's very worrying because this government claims that it's worried about poverty and child poverty and issues like that. But the facts are that the tax and benefit changes are actually responsible for this increase in poverty. And also, of course, protecting pensioners. Poverty for pensioners is going to decline, whilst for children it's going up. Now, that's to do with policy. It's nothing to do with the economy. I mean, it's to do with tax and benefit changes.
It is about policy. That was Professor Keith Pilbeam from City University, Department of Economics and Finance. Their policy is to create what David coined the phrase, the Hunger Games society. Because if the government had let the banks fail, what would have happened? See, nobody's ever asked this question. It's never been discussed on national media. What would have happened if the banks had failed? Well, the banks would have been nationalised, right? The banks would have been taken into public ownership. That could never be allowed to happen. Public ownership of major financial institutions could never be allowed to happen. Because if that was to happen, and countries were to supply their own currency, their own sovereign currency, interest-free, print their own money, as they should be doing, it's pretty much game over for the cabal. And this is why I use the analogy of this is the entry level. This is the gatekeeper to the conspiracy. The twine that binds the conspiracy in the box is the financial system. Who was advocating in 2008, 2009 to allow the banks to fail so that they could be taken into public ownership? Who was advocating for that? Nobody. Nobody was asking the question, well, if we're using billions of pounds of taxpayers' money, why don't we just own those banks? Who was asking those questions at the time? Well, we were. I was doing a radio show in Spain. We were screaming it from the rooftops, getting economists to talk about it. Nobody else was. Can never be allowed to happen, that. It is exactly 27 minutes to the top of the hour. This is your Sunday View, brought to you in association with davidicke.com. I'm going to take a break. When I come back, there have been quite a few tweets on this. I will read them and then we will move on.
Looking to arrange a mortgage? Confused by all the deals available? Let Manchester Mortgages do the work for you. Take advantage of our free mortgage review offer throughout February and March and see if we can save you money. We are whole of market brokers with access to hundreds of mortgage schemes across the UK. Call us on 0161 706 0242 or go to manchestermortgages.co.uk. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage. Manchester Mortgages are a trading style of Mortgages for You Northwest Limited, who are authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever.
Virtually every transaction that involves a child is valuable to somebody.
We intend to show everyone the real reason children are being removed at an alarming rate.
No, this is awful.
The baby's not been seen by the doctor or nothing.
They are psychopathic.
They have got the legal right to kill children now, because that's what they do.
Traffic 2, available now at premilonpictures.co.uk.
Jim Rickards here, best-selling author of Currency Wars and The Road to Ruin. But today I'm issuing a critical new warning to all British listeners. Britain is under attack and your personal and financial security is in grave danger. To find out why, visit britainunderattack.co.uk now. The threat of this devastating attack increases every day, and it's crucial you act before it's too late. To see what you can do about it, visit britainunderattack.co.uk right away. It's not too late to prepare. See my full warning at britainunderattack.co.uk today.
Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
Welcome back to the programme. You can tweet at Richie Allen Show, email richie at richieallen.co.uk. I hope I'm coming through loud and clear today. It's all good. It's good to be operating now without the stresses of recent weeks where there were some issues with buffering and stop starting and all of that. We've upgraded again, and we're really happy. State of the art stuff here at the Richie Allen Show Towers in South Manchester. It's all good. Hi to Trevor Sayers, who says the Fed are preparing another $1 trillion quantitative easing for the next financial crash. Thanks, Trev. Hi to Mark Morrison as well. Mark, how are you? Nice to know you're listening. Mark says austerity is the excuse to let all the weak, poor and disabled disappear into the same thin air the money comes from. Yes, it's the old Hitler thing. Life unworthy of life. Useless eaters. Get rid of them. La Antenna says everything is supposed to be broken. The change agents need to problem reaction solution this country into transition. Hi to Base Ninja, who tweets, go and ask your MPs if they're human and ask who do we owe the money to. Mine went flustered in answering with bullshit, says Base Ninja. They won't answer the question. They won't. I've had MPs on this programme. I've had Paul Flynn on, and the lovely Paul Flynn, very senior politician Paul Flynn. Paul's in his mid-80s now, isn't he? Newport MP. He's on the shadow front bench, isn't he, Paul? He's a shadow minister for Jeremy Corbyn. Shadow minister is right. Paul has spoken to me before and he's acknowledged it. Yeah, that's the way it is, Richie. Yeah. You know, what am I going to do about it? And ultimately, what am I going to do about it? You know? What can a politician do about that? Trevor says, usual bullshit. Strip the NHS and welfare of funds, rob the taxpayer, but always find cash for the self-seeking elites. Always find cash for war, Trevor. Kate Coley, my mate in Manchester. Kate, how are you? I reckon that ultimately we owe loads of money to the Queen, says Kate. Mark Richards tweets, if we have to pay the EU 60 billion, don't we need to see their books first? What no one has seen for over 20 years. That's right, Mark. Nobody has signed off on the European Union accounts for over 20 years. That's right. Absolutely spot on. Rich tweets, there's some interesting articles about the Greater Israel. I wonder how long that new Banksy hotel will be allowed to stay. Spoke about that on the impromptu music show on Friday. Les tweets, if there's a chance things are not going to go your way, blame the Russians. That's all about Emmanuel Macron and his digital marketing company, who have claimed that they are being snooped on and spied on by the Russians. No proof has been offered, of course. That story being run by Sky News today. And Robert Watson, on the spectre of France leaving the European Union, Robert says they have to call it Frogsit, Richie. Frogsit, yeah. It's not Frexit, Frogsit. Frogsit is good. I think the future Mrs. Allen would approve of that. And Paul Sweeney tweeted me to say, on European Union citizens being nervous about, about the deal and having to go back to their own countries, which is nonsense, of course. Paul Sweeney tweets, Richie, I have a load of Italian workers coming into my place. They aren't worried about any of this at all, says Paul. Nor should they be, Paul. Nor should they be at all. Hi to Gail and hi to Sue, who've just tuned in. We're live on Sunday View today. Sunday View, the newspaper review show, broadcasting live every Sunday at 11 a.m. GMT. My name is Richie Allen. I'm actually cutting and pasting as we go along. I've just cut a story there about, I'll give you the gist of it. The Sunday Observer say that the watchdog is going to launch a probe into the misuse of data in politics. Now, what this is about is the UK's privacy watchdog is making claims. And they're doing it very subtly. They're not coming out and making claims, but they are implying They are implying that a big US firm was involved in mining data on British voters, UK voters, before the referendum in June. And that they were using that data in ways maybe they shouldn't have been using to determine what way people were thinking about voting. And they've linked this to a company in America owned by US billionaire Robert Mercer. And they are saying that this guy has played an influential role not only in the US election, but also here in the UK. Now, again, there's no evidence of this, that people's data has been misused by people in favour of Brexit. It's just more bullshit, unsubstantiated garbage. I'm not saying it didn't happen. Listen carefully, because I hate this shit when people don't listen to what I'm saying. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I'd like a bit of proof. They're saying that there are concerns about the use of personal data, and we want to interview this company. The company has offices in London, New York, and Washington. It uses data analysis to build up sophisticated profiles of individuals to predict how they might vote. So they're hinting at bad behaviour, at the invasion of privacy, and all of this. These are the people, of course, who want to remain in the European Union, but they're offering no proof. They are saying and implying that the dubious collection and crunching of data by Nigel Farage's mate might have influenced the result of the election. No proof, but we're back again to the story earlier on about the Russians interfering in the France presidential election process. It's just out there, isn't it? It's out there on the wind. And of course, people don't hear that there's no proof. They just hear, oh, UKIP were fixing the election. They were snooping on people. Just more unsubstantiated claims. The Sunday Telegraph's front page says Trump accuses Obama of new Watergate plot. Trump accuses Obama of new Watergate plot. In the Sunday Telegraph today, Trump has alleged that his predecessor, Barack Obama, ordered his phones, Trump's phones, to be tapped at Trump Towers during the election campaign. It gets madder and madder around Trump. This is ABC News reporting on this yesterday.
It was just before sunrise in Palm Beach when the President of the United States took to Twitter to make one of his most stunning accusations ever. Terrible. Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. Followed by 4 more presidential outbursts taking on President Obama and misspelling tap. How low has President Obama gone to tap my phones during the very sacred election process? This is Nixon Watergate. Bad or sick guy. Today, a senator from the president's own party, along with U.S. intelligence officials, called it a troubling development.
I'm very worried. I'm very worried that our president is suggesting that the former president has done something illegally.
It would be a crime to reveal such a secret FBI wiretap on Trump Tower, and no U.S. official contacted by ABC News would confirm the allegation.
It's an extremely serious offense. Anyone who would reveal the existence of a wiretap would violate federal law.
Because the president cited no proof, it is not clear tonight whether he based his allegations on a top-secret White House briefing or whether it came from reading an article on the conservative Breitbart website posted Friday that detailed speculation from a conspiracy-loving talk show host, Mark Levin.
How many of Trump's people were eavesdropped on? How many had their conversations intercepted, recorded, transcribed? Because this, ladies and gentlemen, is the big scandal.
A spokesperson for President Obama quickly called the allegations false. And one of Obama's former national security aides, Ben Rhodes, responded to Trump. No president can order a wiretap. Those restrictions were put in place to protect citizens from people like you.
Is Trump, and this is serious stuff, it's serious and it's funny, I suppose, in one way. Is Trump pissed when he's tweeting people at 2-3 o'clock in the morning? I mean, it seems likely. I would imagine anybody in his job, I would imagine they operate on 4 or 5 hours sleep anyway. I operate on 4 or 5 hours sleep. I don't sleep very much. I spend most of the time working on this programme. I'm not a martyr now. I'm not looking for any praise for that, but I do. But I wonder, is he pissed? I've had personal experience with that, funny enough. Not me tweeting pissed, but people tweeting at me while pissed. It's quite sad, really. But enough about that and enough about me. Evidence, Donald. You know, I'd love Donald Trump to have evidence that Barack Obama was or had ordered the tapping of his phones. I'd love him to have evidence. Why is that? Because, and listen up now, Trump worshippers, listen up carefully, Obama was one of the greatest psyops ever perpetrated on the American people. Ever. Another war criminal, another murderer. I think 27,000 bombs were dropped on people last year by the murderer-in-chief. So I'd love to see Obama in jail, right? Surely Trump's evidence is not coming from one of his far-right news sources like Breitbart or InfoWars. But it probably is, right? And the screaming trolls who worship Trump won't be turned, though. And it's not my job to turn them or to change their minds, because they're right anyway. Everybody else is wrong. No matter what Trump does or says, can't do any wrong. The more you look at it, he really is the chaos president, you know. Slipped into the job, fooling everybody, catching us by surprise, me included, by the way. And I think, and I'll say it again, he's there to divide people in ways we haven't seen for decades, to ultimately start a civil war in the United States. And some people can't see it no matter what he does. Other people have a strong financial interest in supporting him no matter what. These people truly are whores. They are the worst of the worst, the enemy of the people. Far worse than Trump or Obama or anybody else. They are traitors to their own people and to their own audiences. I mean, if this was real, right? If politics was real, it isn't. You know what we think about Clinton and Obama and Trump and all of them. Trump would have to resign unless he could prove what he said. Now, Gregory Corte is the White House correspondent for USA Today. He was on Fox News yesterday. Fox is InfoWars' chief competition for who can get their tongues the furthest up Trump's arse, right? It's a real race between Trump and between Fox and InfoWars, right? Who can get their tongue so far up Trump's arse it's coming out his mouth. Here's Corte. You'll hear the Fox presenter first putting a question to him. Listen carefully.
What's new here? We've seen these reports before that there was perhaps a request to a FISA court, which is the secret court for national security, for wiretaps against a couple of Trump aides. There's a big distance between that and President Obama, quote unquote, ordering Mr. Trump's phones tapped.
Yeah, anytime you see an early morning tweet from President Trump, you really have to figure out what he was watching or what he was reading immediately before he tweeted that.
It looks like probably a Breitbart article from Thursday or Friday.
Which referenced a Mark Levin rant on talk radio, which referenced a blog, an old and unsubstantiated story back from November that somehow the Obama administration, the FBI, was wiretapping Trump Tower in an effort to figure out Russian connections between the Trump campaign and some Russian banks. That has now resurfaced because the President of the United States tweeted. It's not something any of us were talking about.
The President of the United States says something. It's news, whether it is true or not, whether it is relevant at that moment or not.
Whether it is true or not. And as I said to the great Cynthia McKinney the other day, who will challenge him? He's not taking questions. Is he, when he tweets out and puts messages on Facebook, the gist of it is, I tweet, you believe me, right? There's no dialogue on Twitter. But Trump fans who get their opinions from Alex Jones, Trump's nightly news network, they won't budge. He's the man, and everyone is out to get him. Nonsense. I wonder, will this cause the Trumpites to think again? It's been reported in the Sunday Mail and the Sunday Telegraph that Trump's son-in-law, the arch Rothschild Zionist, Jared Kushner, has met Tony Blair 3 times in the last few months and had a 3-hour meeting with Blair last week at the White House. Now, some news organisations are reporting that Blair is going to be invited to become a Middle East envoy to Donald Trump. Now, I think this is probably bullshit. I doubt very much that's going to happen. I doubt very much at any time soon that Trump is going to appoint Tony Blair to any position. It's not going to happen, in my opinion. Right? If I'm wrong, I'll have a field day with it, but I'm honest, I don't think that's going to happen. What is Jared Kushner doing, meeting with Tony Blair to talk about the Middle East? Didn't Trump say 1,000 times that these guys, Blair and Bush, had dragged the United States into a nightmare war with Iraq, a nightmare situation in Afghanistan, and now the Rothschild Zionist in town, in DC, Jared Kushner, is spending time with Tony Blair, 3 meetings, including a 3-hour meeting last week. What did Trump supporters, the fanatics, the rabid, drooling, dribbling, stuttering morons that infest social media screaming about Trump, what did they make of that, I wonder? You know what? The truth is, they won't answer that question. They're incapable of answering that question. They're incapable of putting the narcissism to one side, looking in the mirror and going, Jesus, yeah, maybe we were wrong about Donald Trump, eh? Maybe we were wrong. I'm going to leave that alone. The Mail on Sunday front page features Jeremy Corbyn, another story about how Corbyn's MPs feel he can't win the election. It's open season on Corbyn, of course. God love him. The Sunday Express and the Sunday Sun, which I don't read. I would never read the Sunday Sun. I wouldn't buy it, and I didn't buy it today. I'll never buy it because of what the Sun and what Rupert Murdoch did to the families of those people killed at Hillsborough in 1989. 96 people killed unlawfully by the ineptitude of the police and the people supposed to be looking after the fans, and the Sun went out and said they were murderers and they were pissing on the dead. Scumbags. But both of them are running stories today about health cash being squandered on aid. £150 million a year from Britain's health budget is being spent on overseas aid, says the Express. And that money could, of course, be plunged or spent or sent immediately into the coffers of the National Health Service. Another story of interest to us in the Sunday Mail. We've covered this extensively during the course of the last 2 years. A teenage dancer is left paralysed from the waist down, claims that doctors have blamed it on the HPV cervical cancer jab she had 6 years ago. This is interesting. Are doctors blaming it on the cervical cancer jab? Well, the Mail reports that Chloe Brooks Holder, when she was younger, danced 6 times a week and was a straight A student. She was given the HPV cancer jab while in year 8 at her school in Cheltenham. Soon after that, she was suffering from muscle pain and a string of viruses. Now she may not walk again, and says her GP has filed a report blaming the jab. She was 12 years old when she got the jab. What happened afterwards, she began to feel dizzy, headaches, fatigue, bone and joint pain, and that resulted in paralysis from the waist down. This is a dreadful, dreadful story. Heaven help that girl who was 8 stone at the time and has plummeted to 5 stone. Lost all of her feeling in her legs. She's now fed through a tube. Very distressing photographs in the Mail over the weekend of the young girl Chloe in bed. And she says, and her family are saying, the doctors are linking what happened to her receiving the HPV cervical jab. We've covered this extensively on the programme. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a health practitioner. I am not. And you should take whatever you hear from me with a pinch of salt. You should do your own research. But if you have a daughter and she's entering puberty and you're thinking of giving her the HPV cervical cancer jab, stop and think very hard about it. The chances of her getting cervical cancer anyway are minuscule. We reported on this extensively over many programs, including a Sunday View, where I dedicated nearly the whole program to it. The odds of getting cervical cancer are astronomical. Get the smear tests done. Don't have this vaccination. There are serious, serious questions about this vaccination. And please go to regret.ie. That is www.regret.ie. Some wonderful, wonderful information on there from courageous women, including Anna Cannon, who's been on this program, talking about what happened to their daughters when they got this vaccination. Go to regret.ie to find out more about it. Please do. And finally, for now, and I'm not going to get into too much of this because, again, I've been covering this for many years in commercial and in independent media. A number of you sent me messages over the weekend to say, Richie, what about what happened in Ireland, in Tuam? You'll know by now that it was revealed on Friday. This isn't new for most of us, but for many people it is new. A mass grave containing the remains of babies and young children has been discovered at a former Catholic orphanage in Ireland. I'm reading now from The Guardian. This is a finding that offers the first conclusive proof following a historian's efforts to trace the fates of nearly 800 children who perished at that orphanage there. The judge-led Mother and Baby Homes Commission said excavations since November at the site of the former Bon Secours Mother and Baby Home in Tuam, County Galway, had found an underground structure divided into 20 chambers containing significant quantities of human remains. This is staggering stuff, this. It's staggering. It's dreadful. Massive, massive credit goes to an Irish woman called Catherine Corliss, who's a historian based in Tuam, and she's absolutely wonderful. And she's basically been, at the forefront of the investigation into this. She's a remarkable woman. We will invite her on the programme at some stage in the future. The findings have provided the first proof after decades of suspicions that the vast majority of children who died at this particular home had been interred on the site in unmarked graves. Some children were thrown into slurry pits. I mean, this is unbelievable. Believable because we know that it went on. But this is what went on in Ireland not so long ago, remember. Now, Catherine Corliss said everything pointed to this area being a mass grave. She recalled how local boys playing in the field had reported seeing a pile of bones in a hidden underground chamber there in the mid-1970s. She also said that when she first began asking questions, she was told by the authorities to leave it alone, to ignore it. If you don't know already, at Mother and Baby Homes across 5 decades, probably more, in the 20th century, the burial practices were just terrible at these sites, and they were secret. And not only that, but wait for it, illegal adoption was all the rage, so were vaccine trials on children. This is what was going on. At a time when weird operations and when experiments were being performed on children, sick children, disabled people in Germany by the lunatic Nazis, it was going on in my country. 35,000 apparently unmarried mothers were thrown into one of these institutions run by the religious orders in Ireland. It's unbelievable. And connect the dots. It is linked interminably to the elite kidnapping and abuse of children, which continues to this day. My worry is when we hear these stories. Catherine Corliss is a hero, by the way, a heroine. My big worry is that people will think of these abuses, especially when we hear about Edward Heath and the like. Getting a lot of feedback there. When we hear about Edward Heath and stories like that, my big worry is that people will see this as a crime of the past and not as a crime of the present day, which it is. Look, I'm going to leave you and love you. That's the end of Sunday View. It's nearly 12 midday. Thanks very much for listening to it. The programme was produced, edited and introduced by myself. Thanks to Simon Stewart for his YouTube work and Aaron's work on the brand new richieallen.co.uk, work which continues, by the way. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Look after yourselves and one another. You and I will talk again tomorrow at 7 p.m. GMT for Monday's Richie Allen Show on davidicke.com. Bye for now. Have a great Sunday.
Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with davidicke.com.